Isn't the gospel passage that I've just read for you the strangest parable you've ever heard? We've all heard it. We've all been to Sunday school. At least most of us have been to Sunday school. We've all heard the story, and we know it, and we think we understand it. But like so much of the gospel, very often I think we misunderstand it. This parable, the whole story, just sort of jerks along. It doesn't quite work. Not to our modern sensibilities, actually. It doesn't work, especially when you get to that poor guy who's chucked out into the outer darkness for violating the dress code. I'm a little bit confused by that. This guy did come after all, and he wasn't in the original guest list. And so the story requires that we unpack it just a little bit, and maybe by doing that we make it a bit easier to absorb, to grasp, and to understand. First of all, this is one of those parables in which the writer, here it is the evangelist we call Matthew, takes a story of Jesus and reworks it for his own purposes. You can see another version of this parable, probably one a lot closer to the one that Jesus actually told, in Luke chapter 14. What Matthew does is sort of soup up the story a little bit, so it isn't exactly a proper parable anymore. Instead, and although Sally wasn't here for me to change, I wasn't here to tell Sally to change it, which is a good thing. Sometimes I micromanage too much. It says the parable of the wedding banquet. Instead, it becomes an allegory of salvation history, a way of telling what Matthew, the evangelist, sees as the central movements of God's actions and plans for all of human history. Since it is an allegory and not technically a parable, we don't need to worry too much about whether the details of the story make sense the way they do with other parables. So, for example, we don't need to worry about how the king keeps the dinner warm while he makes war against the first set of invited guests, destroys their city, and then has the banquet in the same city on pretty much the same day. I think wedding venue people get a little bit flustered when the bride is half an hour late. I always tell the bride, listen, if you are not there within 15 minutes after your plans start, I'm leaving. I never do, but idle threats. Listen, any of you are planning to get married soon, just remember it's not an idle threat. That sort of thing is no problem in an allegory. In this allegory, the first guests stand for Israel. They represent Israel. The first two sets of slaves who issue the invitation represent the prophets of the Old Covenant, which is why some of them are beaten up and killed. Hardly the usual way of declining an invitation. Can you imagine? No, I don't want to go to that wedding, so I'll just kill the invitation. The city that is destroyed represents Jerusalem. In the